Thank you very much. Perfect. So I'm going to introduce James to you properly in just a second, because I thought it'd be probably a good place to start, just to talk a little bit about crowdfunding. I have quite a varied role at Indiegogo. I look after the UK and Europe, so quite a lot of travel involved, but ultimately my role is based around supporting businesses of all sizes who ultimately want to raise money. Increasingly, we're seeing more and more who are looking to take a new product to market, and these really are businesses that are really quite varied stages. Perfect. So crowdfunding is fast becoming the go-to-market strategy for a lot of different types of businesses. And before we drill down into this in a bit more detail, and I'll be able to give you some examples as well, and I'm really pleased that First Build was mentioned because they're one of my first examples. I'm going to talk a little bit about the different types of crowdfunding and just give everybody here a bit of a baseline to work from. So we're in the business of perks crowdfunding or rewards crowdfunding, as it's more commonly referred to in the UK. This is very transactional. This is an opportunity for you to pre-sell one of your products, or if you're an existing business, to take a new product to market. Ultimately, you are asking customers to put their faith and their money into you and into your product. And in return, generally, they get a discounted product delivered at a slightly later date than they might expect if they were ordering from Amazon or eBay, for example. But for you guys, it's an absolutely fantastic opportunity to put some really relevant case studies together and actually reach a much wider audience than you might be able to do if you were simply launching it on your own website, for example. So we'll speak to James a little bit later on, but he's an absolutely perfect example of how you can create something almost from scratch by ultimately running a crowdfunding campaign. Equity crowdfunding. So common equity crowdfunders in the UK, Crowdcube and Seedrs, for example. This is much more Dragon's Den or Shark Tank style. So you are giving away equity in your business, and you have to obviously be compliant. There's a lot more hoops to jump through, ultimately. And the third most common type of crowdfunding, and probably the biggest actually, is loans crowdfunding. So you're taking essentially what would normally be, let's say, for example, a business loan from a bank, but instead of it coming from one source, it's coming from multiple sources, often thousands of individuals that have a bit of extra cash in the bank, and they're prepared to lend that to you in exchange for a fixed rate of return. So we're here today, obviously, to talk a little bit about corporate innovation, and this gets me quite excited, actually, because it's not just about helping a small business or a business that someone's running from home ultimately get off the ground. It's much more around how we can engage with those big existing businesses and ultimately encourage them into the crowdfunding space, which we're seeing happen more and more. So one of the first examples, First Build. In April 2015, GE's First Build brand, they actually launched the Paragon Induction Cooktop. And you'll see I've got notes for these, so I don't want to get any of this wrong. There's some quite lengthy names. But they raised more than $361,000 on Indiegogo back in 2015. In August the same year, they also launched the Opal Nugget Ice Maker, raising more than $2.7 million in pre-sales. And for us, this was a really great example and case study of how existing corporations are innovating internally, often creating a sub-brand or a department that might not have been there before, and ultimately launching new products through this particular team. Their head of research and development said this, that the total time from concept to production was just 4 months. If it flops, no worries. Upfront costs were some 20 times less than a traditional product rollout, which can cost tens of millions of dollars. And if they're going to fail, they want to fail quickly. I think that's a really strong quote that we've been using as soon as we got it back in 2015. So we'll move on to someone else. I'm sure most people here have heard of Whirlpool. In 2016, the Whirlpool Labs team launched the Vessi beer fermenter and dispenser, raising $270,000 in pre-orders. In February 2017, the same team launched the Zera food recycler, which was released, raising more than $550,000. And again, 2 awesome products that ultimately went to market very quickly. This is what the Whirlpool team had to say, that the reason they wanted to go with Indiegogo is because it validates this market for home brewing. They weren't sure whether they wanted ultimately to enter that market, but working with ourselves, they were able to see that there was a demand for that particular product. And my next and actual final example on the corporate side is with RB, with Reckitt Benckiser. In 2016, RB, makers of Durex and Lysol and Nurofen and Airwick, that again I'm sure a lot of people have heard of, launched the Healthier Tomorrow Challenge in partnership with Indiegogo. We encouraged health tech startups to get involved with them. And it was a program very much run on the basis that RB as a big corporation can ultimately help these smaller health tech startups get a bit of a leg up, really. So the winners, as of 2018, will receive global marketing support from RB, coaching, mentoring, and access to their global distribution networks. So again, not launching new products, but actually helping smaller companies to launch their products and ultimately taking them into the RB family. And the final quote for today. This program enables us to connect with passionate thinkers around the world that, similar to us, are willing to disrupt the health and wellness space to make a real difference in people's lives. So that came from their head of innovation. All of these partnerships are managed through our enterprise team, and they're incredibly important for Indiegogo because they add an extra layer of confidence, I think, to a lot of backers that we get. Just this year, I work with the Morphy Richards team based in the UK, who ultimately took a new product to market with Indiegogo. It's their the first time they'd actually gone directly to consumer. Everything beforehand had been done through retailers. So again, for us, great to get involved in that as an initial opportunity, and that was just this summer. So I'd like to next introduce a man who's no stranger to corporate innovation, and actually just 1 year ago ran a hugely successful campaign on Indiegogo for his indestructible phone cases.
Hiya.
So here's James.
Thanks very much. So I'm James, and I used to be at Procter & Gamble, so corporate, and then I moved to East London. I couldn't grow a beard though, and we started innovating. And we actually started off the business doing consulting for bigger businesses, and we got an office in China, helping them bring products to market. And then we decided to do something mad. We decided to enter the phone accessory market. So if you search on Amazon, you get 6 million results. I think you did at some point on .com. A few people thought we were pretty mad being a startup going, yeah, there seems like there's a lot of competition. Let's give it a go. So we entered the phone accessory market, and this wouldn't have worked with a normal conventional launch like we used to at Procter & Gamble. So we did an unconventional launch. We did it through crowdfunding. So we launched just before about under a year ago, and it raised 2.4 million, and we got a lot of backers through Indiegogo. In fact, it got to the point that Indiegogo system actually had to change the maximum number of backers you could get. And it's been the biggest phone accessory campaign that Indiegogo has ever had. We went from idea to shipping to over 100 countries in 6 months. So it was rapid. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a few insights of how it's different running a unconventional kind of crowdfunding launch versus a conventional launch. So there's 6 kind of points that I wanted to go over. The first one is the speed. So I normally say that if we're not embarrassed with kind of things we're launching, the things we're doing, I mean, there's loads of spelling mistakes in this slide, then we're most probably not going fast enough. We have to go fast, especially in the phone accessory market. The second one is we can actually test things before they go live. So we can test our pricing, we can test what products people like before we go into the market. We can gain forecasts. We can understand what products are going to sell the best, what marketing is going to work the best before we actually launch. The fourth one is it's very different launching through crowdfunding. You do need to talk to real people. And if you do manage to talk to people, Indiegogo help you get what they call the Indiegogo factor. If you bring people to Indiegogo, they'll also bring people to your page, and you can hopefully launch with a bang. The fifth one is a bit weird. Now, we didn't go to retailers. Now retailers are coming to us. I'm pretty sure if we went to retailers saying, we've got an idea of doing a phone case, no one would reply to us. And then the sixth one is you can build a really quick, compelling story. So we've done a lot of weird viral things, like our video was throwing phone cases off a crane, and now we've got other videos of shooting iPhones and all sorts of interesting stuff. And it's that kind of different way of kind of talking to shoppers that's really important if you're going to compete in a competitive category like phone accessories. So here's my kind of top tips on how to launch a successful crowdfunding campaign. So the first one is it's all about the story. Stories are so important, and if you look at any big crowdfunding campaign, any $1 million crowdfunding campaign, it's all about the story. Don't use your normal agency, because I remember working at P&G, and I think if we were to use the agencies and say we wanted to do a crowdfunding campaign, it would go wrong. The third one is you need to talk to real people. It's not about marketing to eyeballs. It's about getting those backers, talking to them. What products do they like? You can actually do a survey and say, out of these 3 products, which would you like? And you can get data before you even start manufacturing. If you're not embarrassed with the work that you're putting out, you're not going fast enough, and that's across everything. And then the fifth one is, if it's a corporate, and this is why we started the business of doing consulting first, is it's important to maybe partner with a designer, maybe partner with a startup to give it that startup factor. There you go.
Cool. Great. So from our side, it's really quite clear that rewards crowdfunding can actually add quite a lot of value to a new product launch. And as I said at the start, we're getting companies of all sizes ultimately, benefiting from all of these things. A fantastic way to validate your audience, actually get people's opinions, like James said, actually speaking to real people. And I know that should you do another campaign, you'll be speaking to your existing customer base and finding out what they want.
Yeah, I mean, on the next campaign that we'll be planning after this session, actually, is we've got a huge list of backers now, 200,000 people who we can speak to through email addresses. And we can do surveys to ask them what they like about and what they don't like about our new products, which is very, very powerful.
And of course, the fact that retailers are coming directly to you off the back of this campaign is fantastic. And we certainly at Indiegogo work with a lot of different distribution partners and fulfillment partners, for example, because it's very much now not just about that tiny sort of month-long window where you actually run your campaign. It's 3, 4, 5 months before that time, and also the same period afterwards as well. So it's turning into much more of a brand building marketing activity than simply raising money and having it in the bank quite quickly. From our side, probably one of the most important things is the fact that customers are paying for your manufacturing. You're spending less money on R&D and ultimately probably a little bit more perhaps on marketing, just to make sure you get it absolutely right, building the customer base beforehand and ultimately running a campaign that everybody within the organization can be proud of.
I mean, it's interesting because we we wouldn't been able to launch into the phone accessory market without doing crowdfunding. The money that we needed to ship to 100 countries and build a brand off that would have been impossible unless you got a lot of investment. And then you're essentially spending a lot of time talking to angel investors that isn't as proactive as going out and talking on social media and actually building that brand and building those backers.
Absolutely. So whilst it's definitely a risk to start that, it's definitely a risk that can pay off. From our side, if anybody wants to get in touch, then there's my email address, and we'll share some contact details a little bit later on if anybody wants anything else. But certainly very happy to hear any comments from anybody here, and also take any final questions.
Thank you, guys.